I thought my husband's promotion party would be peaceful until his mother stood before 60 people, holding a white envelope. She smiled and announced these were 47 reasons her son should divorce me. Everyone laughed. Even my husband laughed. I did not. I opened the envelope and read reason number 23. Her smile vanished instantly. She did not know it yet, but that list was not a joke. It was the evidence that would cost her everything. My name is Stella Watson. I am 33 years old, and as I stood in the center of a rented ballroom in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I realized that my life was about to be dismantled for sport. The air in the room smelled of roasted garlic, expensive Chardonnay, and the specific, suffocating perfume that wealthy Midwestern women wear when they intend to judge you. It was supposed to be a celebration. The banner hanging above the mahogany bar read, "Congratulations, Ethan," in shimmering gold script. It was my husband's promotion party, an event that had been curated down to the last cocktail napkin by the woman currently tapping a silver spoon against her crystal champagne flute. Marjorie Callahan, my mother-in-law. The sharp ting-ting-ting of metal against crystal sliced through the murmur of 60 guests. The room fell silent with practiced obedience. Marjorie did not have to shout to command a room. She possessed the terrifying gravity of a collapsed star. She stood near the head table, wearing a structured gown that cost more than my first car. Her silver hair coiffed into a helmet of perfection that no wind in Michigan would dare disturb. She offered the room a benevolent smile, the kind that never quite reached her eyes, which remained cold and assessing, like a raptor scanning the tall grass for movement. Ethan was standing to my left. He looked handsome in his charcoal suit, flush with the adrenaline of his new title and the whiskey he had been nursing for the last hour. When his mother stood up, he straightened his posture instinctively, a reflex ingrained in him since boyhood. He squeezed my hand, but his palm felt damp. "If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment," Marjorie said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, and projected effortlessly to the back of the room. "We are all so proud of Ethan. We know how hard he has worked to reach this milestone, but behind every successful man, there is a story and a struggle." She paused for effect. The guests chuckled politely. I felt a prickle of unease crawl up the back of my neck. I decided that tonight was the perfect opportunity to give my daughter-in-law a special gift, Marjorie announced. She turned her gaze toward me. It was not a look of affection, it was a look of challenge. "Stella, dear, you have been with us for 5 years now, and in the spirit of honesty and family growth, I have compiled something for you." From behind the podium, she produced a white envelope. It was thick. It was not a greeting card. It looked official, heavy with content. "I call this," she said, lifting the envelope high so the light caught the stark white paper, 47 reasons my son should divorce you." For a second, there was total silence. The guests processed the words. Then, a ripple of laughter started near the front and spread outward. It was a nervous, confused laughter at first, but Marjorie's smile widened, signaling that this was a joke. It was a roast. It was entertainment. The tension broke, and the room erupted into guffaws. Men slapped their thighs. Women covered their mouths, giggling at the audacity of it. I stood frozen. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and lightheaded. I looked at Ethan, waiting for him to step forward, to take the microphone, to tell his mother that this was inappropriate. Ethan laughed. He threw his head back and laughed along with his boss, with his college friends, with the neighbors. He looked at me, his eyes crinkled with mirth, and nudged my shoulder. "Oh, come on, Stell," he mouthed, his voice lost in the noise. "It is just a joke. You know, Mom." That was the moment the marriage actually ended. Not when I read the paper, but when he laughed. He had instinctively stood on the side of the laughter rather than standing beside his wife. I felt a strange clarity wash over me. The room seemed to slow down. I disconnected from the humiliation and entered a state of hyper-awareness, I looked around the room, cataloging faces. To my right, near the buffet, stood Naomi, my best friend. She was not laughing. Her jaw was set so hard I could see the muscle twitching. Her hand was already gripping her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. She met my eyes, and her gaze was a lifeline. I am here. Her eyes said, I am witnessing this. Near the entrance stood Ren, Ethan's younger sister. Ren looked physically ill. She was clutching her clutch bag against her stomach as if she might be sick. She knew something. Her eyes darted from her mother to me, filled with panic, and in the corner, sitting alone at a small round table, was Aunt Celeste, the quiet one, the one the family ignored. She was watching Marjorie with a look of pure, distilled hatred. She caught my eye and gave a barely perceptible nod. Marjorie walked over to me, her heels clicking rhythmically on the parquet floor. She held the envelope out, her face arranged in a mask of playful mockery. Go on, dear, she purred, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. It is good for the soul to hear the truth. Read a few for us. Let's see if you agree. The crowd cheered. Read it. Read it. A man in a blue blazer shouted. It was like a medieval stoning. But with hors d'oeuvres, I reached out and took the envelope. It felt heavy in my hand. I did not tremble. I opened the flap, which was not sealed. She wanted easy access. Inside, I found 4 sheets of premium bond paper. I pulled them out. The text was not handwritten. It was typed, single-spaced, with bullet points and bold headers. It looked like a quarterly performance review or a legal brief. It was titled, in bold capital letters, Reasons for Dissolution of Marriage. I scanned the first page. Number 1. She prioritizes her career over domestic stability. Number 2. Her cooking is substandard and lacks nutritional planning. Number 3. She does not dress in a manner befitting a Callahan wife. It was a list of petty grievances, classist insults, and cruel observations she had been hoarding for half a decade. The crowd was still tittering, waiting for me to read something funny, something self-deprecating. Marjorie was beaming, basking in the attention. Convinced she had executed the perfect social assassination, she thought I would cry. She thought I would run out of the room, leaving Ethan to be comforted by her and his ex-girlfriend, Kendra, who I could see standing in the front row, wearing the exact shade of sage green Marjorie had told me not to wear. But I did not run. I flipped to the second page. My eyes scanned down past number 15, past number 20. The room buzz was starting to dim slightly. My silence was lasting too long. They wanted a reaction. Then, my eyes landed on reason number 23. My heart stopped, literally. For a beat, it ceased to function. The air left my lungs. The words on the page were black and sharp, but they did not make sense in the context of a roast. They did not make sense in the context of a joke. Number 23. She is financially irresponsible and reckless, as evidenced by the $14,700 line of credit she opened in secret to renovate a house she does not own. I stared at the words, $14,700, a line of credit, in my name. I had never opened a line of credit. I had never renovated a house. But Marjorie knew the exact amount. Marjorie knew the exact purpose listed on the application. A cold realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This was not just an insult. This was a slip-up. In her arrogance, in her desperate need to pad the list to reach a substantial number, she had included a detail she should not have known. She had included a detail that only the person who committed the fraud would know. I looked up. The room was quiet now, waiting. Ethan was looking at me with a confused half-smile, waiting for the punchline. I looked at Marjorie. She was standing 6 feet away, a glass of champagne in one hand, her other hand resting lightly on her hip. She looked triumphant. She thought she had won. She thought this list proved I was a bad wife. She had no idea she had just handed me a signed confession to a federal crime. I took a deep breath. The smell of garlic and perfume was nauseating, but my voice, when it came, was steady. It was the voice I used in boardrooms when I had to deliver bad news to stakeholders. "Everyone wants to hear this, right?" I asked, my voice carried without the microphone. "Read it," someone shouted from the back, though the enthusiasm had dampened. "Okay," I said. "I will choose one at random. Let us go with reason number 23. I saw Marjorie's expression flicker, just a fraction of an inch, a tiny crack in the porcelain. She did not remember what number 23 was. She had written so many lies. She had lost track of the truth buried in them. I lifted the paper higher. "Reason number 23, I read, projecting my voice to the corners of the room. "Stella is financially duplicitous. She supposedly opened a secret credit line 10 days ago for $14,700. Using a mailbox address that does not belong to her, I lowered the paper just enough to look her in the eyes. "That is fascinating. Marjorie," I said, my voice dropping an octave, deadly serious. "Because I never opened that account, but you seem to know the exact balance, and the exact date." The smile fell off Marjorie's face as if someone had cut the strings holding it up. Her skin went the color of old ash. Her hand, the one holding the champagne, jerked, spilling a splash of golden liquid onto her expensive dress. She did not notice. Her eyes were locked on mine, wide with sudden, absolute terror. She remembered. She remembered that she was the one who filled out the application. She remembered that she was the one who had the statements diverted. She remembered that she had put this on the list because she believed her own lie that I would pay for it eventually. So it was effectively my debt. But she had forgotten that by writing it down, she was admitting she knew about a financial crime that had not been disclosed to anyone, including me. The silence in the room changed. It was no longer the silence of anticipation. It was the silence of a car crash. It was the heavy, suffocating pressure of a truth that no one wanted to acknowledge. Ethan's laugh was gone. He looked from me to his mother, his brow furrowed. "Stell," he said, his voice weak. "What does that mean?" I ignored him. I kept my eyes on Marjorie. Her mouth opened, then closed. She gripped her pearl necklace with her free hand, twisting the strands so tight I thought the string would snap and send pearls scattering across the floor like hail. She stammered. It was the first time in 5 years I had heard her stutter. "I only meant, you wrote it down." "Marjorie," I said. "Number 23, it is right here, typed, dated. Do you want to explain to these 60 people how you know about a line of credit that I have never seen?" She took a step back. The guests were exchanging glances. The fun was over. The waiters had stopped moving. The air conditioner hummed loudly in the vacuum of sound. I folded the paper precisely along its crease. I did not crumple it. This was evidence. I placed the other 3 pages behind it and held the stack against my chest. "Actually," I said, "do not explain. Not here." I turned to look at the crowd. They were staring at us with open mouths, their drinks forgotten in their hands. I saw Naomi in the corner. She was typing furiously on her phone now, documenting. I saw Wren, who had covered her face with her hands. She knew. She had known. I turned back to my husband. He looked like a child who had lost his mother in a supermarket. He was terrified, but not for me. He was terrified of the scene. "Happy promotion, Ethan," I said. "Your mother gave me a wonderful gift. The truth." I walked past Marjorie. She was frozen in place, a statue of regret and panic. I could hear her breathing short, shallow gasps. As I passed her, she reached out a hand as if to grab my arm, to stop me, to take the paper back. I shifted my weight and stepped out of her reach without breaking stride. "Don't," I whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. "You have done enough." I walked out of the ballroom. I walked past the gift table piled high with boxes. I walked past the welcome sign. I pushed open the double doors and stepped out into the cool Michigan afternoon. My hands were shaking now, but not from fear. They were shaking from the sheer, raw power of what I held. That night, I did not humiliate her. I did not scream. I did not flip a table. I simply read what she wrote. She thought she was handing me a list of my failures. Instead, She had handed me the weapon that would dismantle her life, brick by brick. She had confessed, and I had the paper to prove it, to understand how the ceiling collapsed. You have to look at the cracks in the foundation. And the first significant fracture appeared exactly 4 weeks prior to the party. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of Tuesday that feels less like a day of the week and more like a physical weight pressing down on your shoulders. I had just walked through the front door of our townhouse, shedding my coat and my bag with the desperate energy of someone who had spent the last 10 hours staring at spreadsheets. I was working as a senior data strategist at Redwood Meridian Analytics, and we had just closed the quarterly projected revenue report. My brain felt like it had been run through a shredder. All I wanted was a glass of cheap red wine, the silence of my living room, and perhaps 30 minutes of mindless television before I had to think about being a human being again. But when I walked into the kitchen, I did not find silence. I found Ethan. He was leaning against the granite island, his phone lying flat on the counter. The speakerphone engaged. The voice emanating from the device was not loud, but it possessed a piercing quality that seemed to cut through the hum of the refrigerator. It was a voice I knew better than my own internal monologue. Marjorie. "It is simply a matter of standards, Ethan," she was saying. Her tone was crisp, efficient, and utterly devoid of warmth, like a surgeon asking for a scalpel. "You are a director now. You are not a junior associate. You cannot celebrate this milestone with a pizza and a pat on the back." Ethan looked up as I entered. He offered me a weak, apologetic smile, the kind that says, "I am sorry, but I am trapped." He mouthed the word "mom" to me, as if I could not already tell by the way the temperature in the room had seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I know. Mom," Ethan said. His voice had that reflexive, conditioned obedience that always emerged when he spoke to her. It was the voice of a 12-year-old boy trying not to get grounded, not a 34-year-old man who had just received a massive promotion. But Stella and I were thinking of keeping it low-key, maybe just a dinner. "Low-key," Marjorie repeated the word as if it were a synonym for filthy. "Ethan, do not be absurd. I have already made some preliminary calls. We need to secure a venue by Friday if we want the good room at the club. Although I suppose the Grand Rapids Event Center might have an opening if we pull strings." I put my bag down on the counter with a deliberate thud. The sound was heavy enough to announce my presence. I walked over to the phone. I was tired, my feet hurt, and I had zero patience for Marjorie's brand of steamrolling. "Hi, Marjorie," I said, leaning over the phone. "It is Stella. We really appreciate the thought, but honestly, we are both swamped right now. A big party feels like a lot of work that we do not have the bandwidth for." There was a pause on the other end of the line. It was not a hesitant pause. It was a tactical one. It was the silence of a general reassessing the battlefield. "Stella," she said. Her voice shifted gears, becoming smoother, coated in a layer of artificial sweetness that tasted like saccharin and arsenic. "I did not realize you were home. You work such long hours. It must be exhausting trying to keep up with everything." "It is fine," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We just want to relax. A dinner here would be lovely. I can make that roast Ethan likes. We can invite your sister and Aunt Celeste." She cut me off. She did not raise her voice. She simply spoke over me with the unstoppable force of a freight train. "Oh, honey, no. You do not need to worry about hosting. We all know that hosting is not exactly your strong suit." I stiffened. Ethan flinched, looking down at his socks. "And I do not mean that as a criticism," Marjorie continued, her voice dripping with faux empathy. "I just mean that given how you were raised, without a lot of formal structure, you probably do not understand the expectations for an event like this. This is about Ethan's career. Stella, it requires a certain touch. People need to see that he has a family that understands protocol." It was the classic Marjorie maneuver. She took my history, my chaotic childhood, my lack of a pedigree, the fact that I had worked my way up from nothing rather than inheriting a trust fund, and she weaponized it. She wrapped the insult in concern so that if I got angry, I would look like the ungrateful, unstable one. "I think I can manage a dinner party," Marjorie, I said, my voice tightening. I am sure you think that, she replied breezily, but I have already handled it. I am taking the burden off your shoulders. You should thank me. I have the guest list 70% complete. I reached out to the old circle, the chaotic ones, the fun ones. Oh, and I made sure to track down Kendra. She is back in Michigan. Did you know that she is working in real estate now? Doing very well. The name landed in the kitchen like a grenade. Kendra, Ethan's college girlfriend, the one Marjorie had loved, the one who came from the right kind of family, who played tennis, who knew which fork to use for salad without thinking about it. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone pale. He knew exactly how inappropriate this was. Inviting an ex-girlfriend to a promotion party was not protocol. It was a power play. Mom, Ethan said, his voice straining. I do not think inviting Kendra is a good idea. That is weird. Do not be insecure, Ethan, Marjorie snapped, dropping the sweet act for a split second. She is an old friend of the family. Her father is on the board of the firm you are trying to court next year. It is business. Besides, Stella is not the jealous type, are you? Stella, you are so modern. She made modern sound like a disease. I felt a heat rising in my chest, a mixture of exhaustion and rage. I wanted to grab the phone and throw it into the sink. I wanted to scream that this was our life, our marriage, and his promotion. But I looked at Ethan, and I saw the pleading in his eyes. He was tired too. He just wanted the conflict to end. Fine, I said, the word tasting like ash. Invite whoever you want. Marjorie, it is your party. Apparently. It is Ethan's party, she corrected me instantly. I am just the facilitator. Oh, and one last thing. I need your current address. The full one, with the zip code extension. You have our address, I said, frowning. You have been here for Thanksgiving. You send us Christmas cards. I know, she said, dismissively. But I want to make sure I have it exactly right for the formal invitations. I want everything to match the official records. Just text it to Ethan. I have to run. The caterer is on the other line. Good night. Kids? The line went dead before we could say goodbye. The silence that followed was heavy. The hum of the refrigerator seemed louder than before. Ethan reached out and touched my arm, his fingers tentative. I am sorry, he said. She is just excited. You know how she gets when she has a project. A project? I turned to him, crossing my arms. She just insulted me, insulted my upbringing, and invited your ex-girlfriend to a party we did not ask for. That is not a project. Ethan, that is an ambush. She does not mean it like that, Ethan said, the automatic defense mechanism kicking in. She is just old-fashioned. She thinks she is helping. And about Kendra, honestly, Stell, it is just politics. Mom is right about Kendra's dad. If I want to make partner in 5 years, I need those connections. It does not mean anything. It means your mother does not respect me, I said quietly, or our marriage. She does, he insisted. Pulling me into a hug, I let him hold me, but I remained stiff. She is just difficult. You know, Mom, her bark is worse than her bite. Just let her throw the party. It makes her feel important. One night, a few hours, and then we go back to normal. Please. For me. I looked up at him. He had the same soft eyes I had fallen in love with 6 years ago. He was a good man, mostly, but he had a blind spot the size of a planet when it came to Marjorie. He thought she was just an overbearing mother. He did not see the predator underneath. Fine, I said, exhaling a long, defeated breath. For you, he kissed my forehead, relieved that the storm had passed. I will text her the address. Do not worry about it. Let's order Thai food. He walked away to find his own phone, humming a little tune, visibly lighter now that I had capitulated. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the black screen of his phone on the counter. Something about the conversation nagged at me. It was not the insults I was used to those. It was not even Kendra that was predictable. It was the address. Why did she need the address confirmed so urgently? She had sent a courier package to us 2 months ago. She knew where we lived, and she had said she wanted it to match official records. What official records? Invitations are not legal documents. You do not need a zip code extension for a party invite. I replayed the tone of her voice in my head when she asked for the address. The theatrical quality had vanished. For those 5 seconds, she hadn't sounded like a mother planning a party. She had sounded like an administrator verifying data. She had sounded like me when I was cross-referencing a database at Redwood Meridian. I looked at Ethan in the living room, scrolling through a delivery app, completely oblivious. He thought this was just a party. He thought his mother was just being annoying. But standing there in the cold light of the kitchen, a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning ran down my spine. I had a sudden, sinking realization that the party was a distraction. It was the magician's waving hand, meant to draw the eye while the other hand did something else entirely. Marjorie did not just want to host a dinner. She did not just want to embarrass me in front of Kendra. She was looking for an entry point. She was verifying data. She was preparing for something that required precision. I did not have proof. I did not have a smoking gun. All I had was a gut feeling honed by years of analyzing patterns in data, looking for the anomaly that predicted the crash. "Chicken or beef?" Ethan called out from the living room. "Beef," I said automatically. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street. The streetlights were flickering on. It looked peaceful, but for the first time in 5 years, I did not feel safe in my own life. I realized then that I could not afford to just let her throw the party, as Ethan suggested. I had to watch her. Marjorie Callahan was not planning a celebration. She was planning an operation, and I was the target. The text message from Ren arrived at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, disrupting a conference call I was leading about data retention policies. It was short, devoid of emojis, and alarming in its brevity. "Coffee. Now. Not the one near your office. The one on 4th. Come alone." Ren, Ethan's younger sister, was not a dramatic person. She was the quietest Callahan, a woman who had learned early on that the best way to survive in Marjorie's orbit was to make oneself as small and uninteresting as possible. She worked in the back office of Summitwell Credit Cooperative, reviewing transaction logs and compliance flags, a job that suited her need for order and silence. For her to demand a meeting in the middle of a workday meant the sky was falling. I feigned a family emergency to my boss, grabbed my coat, and drove to the coffee shop on 4th Street. It was a dark, narrow place that smelled of burnt beans and damp wool, far enough from the city center that we were unlikely to run into anyone from my firm or, God forbid, Marjorie's social circle. I found Ren in a booth at the very back. She looked terrible. Her skin, usually a pale porcelain, was gray. She was wearing a heavy coat even though the heating in the shop was blasting, and her hands were wrapped around a paper cup as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the earth. "Is everyone okay?" I asked, sliding into the booth opposite her. "Is it Ethan or your dad?" Ren shook her head rapidly. She did not look up. She reached into her large tote bag and pulled out a manila folder. It was thin, containing only a few sheets of paper, but she placed it on the table with the caution one might use when handling radioactive material. "You need to see this," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. I could get fired for showing you this. It is a violation of privacy protocols. But if I do not show you, I am an accomplice. And I cannot be an accomplice. Stella, I cannot do that again." "Accomplice to what?" I asked, reaching for the folder. "Just look," she said. I opened the folder. Inside was a printout of a digital application form. It was a standard credit agreement from Summitwell Credit Cooperative. The header was boring, bureaucratic text about interest rates and liability. I scanned down to the applicant information. Applicant name, Stella Marie Watson. Social security number, mine. Date of birth, mine. Employer, Redwood Meridian Analytics. I frowned. "Ren, what is this?" "I did not apply for a loan with Summitwell. We bank with Chase." "Keep reading," Ren said. "Look at the approval details, and look at the contact information." I moved my eyes down the page. Product personal line of credit. Status approved. Credit limit $20,000. Current draw $14,700. Date opened 10 days ago. I stared at the number. $14,700. I do not understand, I said, my brain struggling to bridge the gap between the paper and reality. It says this account is open. It says money has been moved. But I did not sign this. I have not been to a Summitwell branch in years. It was an online application, Wren explained. She was speaking fast now, the words tumbling out. It was flagged in my queue this morning not because of the amount $14,000 is under the trigger for automatic fraud review, but because of a data mismatch on the secondary verification. The system noticed that the email address used for confirmation did not match the email address on your credit report. It is a small flag. Usually, we just call to verify, but I saw the name. I saw it was you. Okay, I said, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. So it is identity theft. Someone stole my data. We need to call the police. Stella, look at the address, Wren interrupted. She reached across the table and tapped a finger on the line labeled Billing Correspondence Address. I looked. It was not my address. It was not our townhouse. P.O. Box 892, Grand Rapids, Michigan. It is just a P.O. box, I said. Hackers use them all the time, right? I know that box number, Wren said. Her eyes were wide and watery. I used to sort the mail for it when I was in high school. It is the box Mom uses for the Callahan Family Trust properties. It is where the rent checks from the old duplex on Sycamore Street go. She keeps the key on her keychain, the one with the little silver poodle. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The noise of the coffee grinder in the background faded into a dull buzz. Are you telling me, I said, measuring every word, that your mother opened a $15,000 line of credit in my name? $14,700, Wren corrected automatically. She was an auditor. Numbers were her safe space. And yes, I checked the IP address of the application submission. It came from a residential connection registered to her home provider. I checked the recovery phone number listed. It is her old landline, the one she keeps in the home office that nobody calls anymore. I looked back at the document. Under the section labeled Purpose of Loan, someone had typed surprise gift for husband/home renovation. It was so neat. It was so plausible. If anyone asked, she could claim she was just helping. She could claim I had asked her to do it because I was too busy, and she was just acting as an admin, but she had used my social security number. She had forged a digital signature. Why? I asked. It was a stupid question, but it was the only one I had. Why would she do this? Ethan makes good money. I make good money. If she wanted us to buy something, we could buy it. Why steal my identity? Wren took a sip of her coffee, her hands shaking so hard the lid rattled. It is not about the money, Stella. It is never about the money with her. It is about leverage. Think about it. She opens this in your name. She uses the money to buy something extravagant for the party, or for the house something that makes her look generous, or makes Ethan look successful. Then, in 6 months, when the bill is overdue and the interest has piled up, who gets the collection notice? I do, I said. Exactly, Wren said. And the statements, they go to her P.O. box. You would never see them. You would not know this debt existed until your credit score tanked. And then she comes in to save the day, or worse, she uses it to prove to Ethan that you are irresponsible. Look at Stella, hiding debt, spending recklessly. It fits her narrative. It fits the story she has been telling everyone since you got married, that you are not good enough, that you are a liability. I felt a wave of nausea. It was not just a crime. It was a trap. It was a long-game psychological operation designed to destroy my financial independence and my marriage in one stroke. Where is the money now? I asked. Transferred to a holding account at a different bank, and then paid out to a vendor. Wren said, I could not trace the vendor fully without a warrant, but the merchant category code is for furniture and interior design. It is a single transaction. $14,700 on furniture. I remembered the phone call from 4 weeks ago. Marjorie asking for our address to match official records. She wasn't checking the address for invitations. She was filling out the credit application form while she was on the phone with us. She needed the zip code extension to bypass the address verification system. Who else knows? I asked. No one, Ren said. Just me. And now you. If I report this internally, I have to flag my own mother for federal wire fraud. Stella, if this gets out, she goes to prison, or at least faces massive fines. This is a felony. I looked at my sister-in-law. She was terrified. She had lived her whole life under the thumb of a woman who viewed people as chess pieces. Ren was waiting for me to tell her to bury it, to tell her to delete the log, close the account quietly, and let Ethan handle it. That is what the family always did. They smoothed things over. They kept the peace. But I was not a Callahan by blood, and I was done keeping the peace. I need a copy of the full audit trail, I said. Ren froze. Stella, I am not asking you to report her, I said calmly. I am asking you to give me the evidence. Print out the IP logs. Print out the secondary contact info match. Print out the transaction history. I need everything you can legally access as a compliance officer. What are you going to do? Ren asked. I am going to make sure she never does this again, I said. Ren studied my face for a long moment. She saw something there that made her sit up straighter. Perhaps she saw the anger that she had never been allowed to express. She nodded slowly. I will get you the file, she said. But you cannot say it came from me. Not yet. I promise, I said. I left the coffee shop with the folder tucked inside my coat. Pressed against my ribs, it felt hot, like a live coal. I drove home in a daze. The city looked different. The familiar streets felt hostile. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for 5 minutes, just breathing. I had to go inside. I had to act normal. But my house no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a crime scene. I walked into the living room. It was tidy. The cleaner had come yesterday, but I felt a compulsion to check. Marjorie had been here 2 weeks ago for a brief visit, dropping off some samples for the party decorations. She had been alone in the living room while I made tea. I walked over to the antique secretary desk in the corner. It was where we kept our mail, our bills, the mundane paperwork of life. I opened the top drawer. It was a mess of takeout menus and coupons. I started sifting through the pile. I did not know what I was looking for, but my instincts were screaming. Ren had said the billing address was the P.O. box. That meant I shouldn't have received anything, but banks are bureaucratic beasts. Sometimes they send a physical confirmation to the home address on file as a fraud prevention measure, regardless of the billing address. A welcome to Summitwell letter. I dug to the bottom of the stack, and there it was. It was a standard white envelope with the Summitwell logo in the corner, but it was not sealed. The flap had been torn open, raggedly, and then tucked back inside. I pulled out the letter. Dear Stella Watson, thank you for opening your new personal line of credit. It was dated 8 days ago. I stared at the torn flap. I had not opened this. I hadn't even seen it. I checked the mail every day. But sometimes, if I was late, Ethan brought it in, or I remembered Marjorie's visit. She had arrived before I got home from work. Ethan had let her in. She had been sitting on the sofa, near the desk, when I walked through the door. She must have seen the envelope on the counter or in the pile. She must have recognized the logo. Panic. She opened it to confirm what it was. And then what? She couldn't take it with her. Ethan might have seen her holding it, so she shoved it into the back of the drawer, burying it under old menus. Hoping I would never clean the drawer out, or hoping that by the time I found it, the damage would already be done, and she could spin a story about how I must have opened it and forgotten. She had been in my house. She had gone through my mail. She had stolen my identity. And she had sat there drinking Earl Grey tea and criticizing my curtains while the evidence of her felony sat 5 feet away in a drawer. My hands were not shaking anymore. A cold, hard calm settled over me. This was not a family dispute. This was not a mother-in-law overstepping boundaries. This was a violation of the most fundamental kind. She did not see me as a person. She saw me as a resource to be exploited and a nuisance to be managed. She thought she was untouchable. She thought that because she was a Callahan, and because I was just Stella from nowhere, I would fold. She thought that even if I found out, I would be too scared to make a scene, too desperate to keep my husband to challenge his mother. I looked at the letter in my hand. Then I looked at the folder Wren had given me. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed a gallon-sized Ziploc bag. I placed the open envelope inside it, careful not to smudge any potential fingerprints on the paper. Though I knew I wouldn't need forensics, I had something better. I had the paper trail. I went to my home office and locked the door. I scanned every document. I uploaded them to a secure cloud drive that Ethan did not have access to. I changed the password on my laptop. Then I sat down and made a list. Not a list of groceries, not a list of chores, a list of steps. Marjorie Callahan liked to use bureaucracy as a weapon. She liked rules. She liked procedures. She liked to catch people on technicalities. "Okay, Marjorie," I said to the empty room. My voice sounded strange, flat and metallic. "You want to play with paper? Let us play." I was not going to confront her. Not yet. Confrontation gives the enemy time to prepare a defense. It gives them time to cry, to manipulate, to gaslight. I was going to let her think she had gotten away with it. I was going to let her walk into that party feeling victorious. I was going to let her build her stage, set her lights, and gather her audience. And then, when she felt safest, when she was standing in the spotlight she loved so much, I was going to show her exactly what happens when you leave a paper trail leading right back to your own front door. I folded the Summitwell letter and placed it in my personal safe. The lock clicked with a satisfying sound. It sounded like the chamber of a gun sliding into place. The silence in our living room that evening was not peaceful. It was the heavy, pressurized silence of a submarine taking on water. I sat on the beige sofa, the one Marjorie had once called aggressively beige, with the folder resting on my knees. I was waiting for the sound of the garage door opening. I had rehearsed this moment in my head a dozen times since leaving the coffee shop, imagining every possible reaction Ethan might have. Anger, shock, denial. I heard the rumble of his engine, then the mechanical whine of the garage door. My heart did not race. It beat with a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. I felt remarkably detached, like a doctor preparing to deliver a terminal diagnosis to a patient she was fond of but could not save. Ethan walked in looking exhausted. His tie was loosened, his top button undone, and he carried the specific weariness of a man who had spent 8 hours nodding at people he secretly disliked. "Hey," he said, dropping his keys in the bowl. "Long day. You would not believe the compliance issues we are having with the merger." He walked toward the kitchen, expecting the rhythm of our life to continue uninterrupted. He expected me to ask about the merger. He expected dinner. "Ethan," I said. My voice was quiet, but it stopped him in his tracks. "Come sit down." He turned, a frown creasing his forehead. He saw the folder on my lap. He saw the way I was sitting spine straight, hands clasped. The exhaustion on his face was instantly replaced by wariness. "What is it?" he asked. "Is it your mom? Is everyone okay?" "Sit down," I repeated. He walked over and sat on the armchair opposite me. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, bracing himself for bad news. "I need you to look at this," I said. I handed him the printout Wren had given me, though I had carefully removed any headers that would identify the source as internal bank data. It just looked like a detailed credit report. Ethan took the paper. He squinted at it, his eyes scanning the rows of data. "A credit report, Stella. What is this? Did we get rejected for something?" "Look at the active accounts," I said. "Look at the last entry." He traced the line with his finger. I watched his face. I saw the moment the numbers registered. $14,700. Summitwell Credit Cooperative. "I do not understand," he said, looking up at me. "We do not bank with Summitwell. Did you open a line of credit?" "No," I said. I did not. Then it is a mistake, he said, a note of relief entering his voice. It is identity theft. We just need to call them. God, that is annoying. I will handle it tomorrow. Look at the address, Ethan, I said. The billing address? He looked back down. He read the P.O. box number. I saw his breath hitch. He knew that box number. He had been mailing rent checks and tax documents to that box number for the family trust since he was 18 years old. That is... He stopped. He swallowed hard. That is Mom's box. Yes, I said. It is. There must be a mix-up, he said quickly. Too quickly. Maybe the bank system auto-filled the wrong address because we are linked in the family database or something. You know how technology is. Ethan, I said, cutting through his desperate attempt at logic, I am not linked to the Callahan Family Trust. My name is not on any of those accounts. The only way that address gets on this application is if someone typed it in, manually. He stared at the paper. The color was draining from his face, leaving it sallow. He looked at the date, 10 days ago. I want you to check my credit score right now, I said. Pull up Credit Karma on your phone. I want you to see it is real. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. His thumbs moved clumsily. A moment later, he was staring at the screen. The drop in my score was visible. The new account was listed there, glaringly real. Okay, he said softly. It is real. Caller, I said. Stella? Caller. Ethan, right now, put it on speaker. He looked at me, pleading with his eyes. He wanted me to give him an out. He wanted me to say we could discuss this later, after he had a drink, after he had slept, after the party, but I sat like a statue. He dialed. The phone rang twice. Hello, darling. Marjorie's voice filled the room. She sounded bright, cheerful, completely unburdened by conscience. I was just finalizing the floral arrangements. The hydrangeas are going to be exquisite. Mom, Ethan said. His voice was tight. I am sitting here with Stella. Oh, she said. The tone shifted instantly. Hello, Stella. We are looking at a credit report, Ethan said. He was rubbing his forehead with his free hand. There is a line of credit opened in Stella's name at Summitwell for $14,000. The billing address is your P.O. box. There was a pause. It was a short pause, maybe 2 seconds. Not the pause of someone who is confused, not the pause of someone who is shocked. It was the pause of someone loading a script. Oh, that, Marjorie said. Her voice was dismissive, light, as if we were discussing a borrowed Tupperware container. Yes, I meant to tell you about that. It is a surprise. A surprise, Ethan repeated. For the party, she said. I found this incredible antique mahogany bar for your study. Ethan, the one you admired in that magazine last year. It was at an auction. I had to move fast. My liquidity is tied up in the trust until the 1st of the month, and I didn't want to bother you with details while you were so busy with the promotion. I just used Stella's info to secure it. I intended to pay it off next week when my dividends clear. I listened to her lies. They were smooth. They were polished. She made it sound so trivial. Just a mother buying a gift. Just a logistical shortcut. Mom, Ethan said, you opened a credit line in Stella's name without asking her. Well, I didn't think she would mind, Marjorie said, her voice taking on a hurt tone. It is for you. Ethan, I am the one making the payments. It does not affect her finances. I was trying to do something nice. I assumed Stella would want to contribute to your success. But if she is going to be petty about paperwork... It is not about being petty, Ethan said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was already wavering. It is identity theft. Mom. Oh, stop using such dramatic words, she snapped. It is a family loan. I am paying it. Honestly, Ethan, I am trying to create a beautiful evening for you, and I am getting interrogated because I bought you a gift. Fine. If Stella is so worried about her precious credit score, I will write a check tomorrow. Is that what you want? Ethan looked at me. I stayed silent. Yes, Ethan said into the phone. "We need it closed. Immediately." "Fine," Marjorie said. "I will handle it. Good night, Ethan." Click. She hung up first. She always hung up first. It was a power move. Ethan put the phone down on the coffee table and let out a long breath. He looked at me with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "See?" he said. "It is okay. She wasn't thinking. She bought the bar for the study. She is going to pay it off." I stared at him. I felt a coldness spreading through my chest that was far worse than the anger I had felt earlier. "Ethan," I said, "she used my social security number. She forged my signature. That is a felony. It does not matter if she pays it back. She committed a crime against me." "I know," he said, holding up his hands. "I know it is messed up, but she explained it. She was in a bind. She wanted to get the gift." "Why did she use my name?" I asked. "What? If she needed credit, why didn't she use her own name?" I asked. "She has perfect credit. She has assets. Why use mine? Why not use yours?" Ethan fell silent. He looked away, toward the window. "She used mine because she wanted to damage me," I said. "She used mine because she thinks I am disposable, and she sent the bills to her box so I wouldn't find out until it was too late. If Wren hadn't—" I stopped myself. "If I hadn't found out, that debt would have sat there. Did she say she was going to tell me no? She said she meant to. That is a lie." "Stella, you are assuming the worst," Ethan said. "She is my mother. She can be controlling. Yes, she can be overbearing, but she is not malicious. She is not trying to destroy you. She committed fraud. Ethan." I stood up. The volume of my voice rose for the first time. "She stole from me, and you are sitting there making excuses for her." "I am not making excuses," he shouted back, standing up to meet me. "I just want peace. Can we just have 1 week where there is no drama? I have the biggest night of my career coming up in 3 days. I have the CEO coming. I have investors coming. I cannot deal with a family war right now. So my safety comes second to your party?" I asked. The question hung in the air, stark and brutal. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. He looked trapped. He looked like a man who was being asked to cut off his own arm. "It is not like that," he said, his voice dropping to a plead. "I am just asking you to wait. Do not make a scene. Do not file a police report right now. If you file a report, it becomes public record. It could get back to my firm. Director's mother arrested for fraud against director's wife. Do you know what that would look like? It would be humiliating. It could kill my promotion." I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the fear in his eyes. It wasn't fear of his mother going to jail. It was fear of embarrassment. It was fear of the social stigma. He was asking me to absorb a felony so that he wouldn't have to feel awkward at a cocktail party. "She knows," I said softly. "She knows you will not do anything. That is why she did it. She knew that even if I caught her, you would protect the family name over me." "That is not true," Ethan said. He moved to touch me, but I took a step back. "I am on your side. Stella, I am, but we have to handle this smartly. Let her pay it off. Let the party happen. Then, after everything settles, we will sit down with her and set boundaries. I promise." "Boundaries." I repeated the word. It sounded ridiculous. "You do not set boundaries with a thief. You call the police." I realized then that the man standing in front of me was not the partner I thought I had. He was a hostage. He had been a hostage his whole life, conditioned to prioritize Marjorie's feelings above reality. And he was trying to pull me into the cell with him. I felt something break inside me. It was a clean break, like a glass rod snapping. The hope that he would stand up for me was gone. "Okay," I said. Ethan blinked. He hadn't expected me to agree. "Okay." "I won't call the police," I said. "I won't file a report. Not today." "Thank you." He exhaled, his shoulders sagging with relief. "Thank you, Stell. I knew you would understand. It is just for a few days." "I won't make a scene," I continued, my voice steady and cold. "I won't scream at her. I will go to the party. I will wear the dress. I will smile. You are the best, he said, reaching out to hug me. I let him wrap his arms around me, but I did not hug him back. My arms hung at my sides. He didn't notice. He was too relieved to notice that he was hugging a mannequin. I just want this to be over, he whispered into my hair. It will be, I said. He pulled back and kissed me on the cheek. I'm going to take a shower. I feel gross. You should, I said. He paused, looking at me, trying to decipher if I was being sarcastic. He decided to ignore the ambiguity. He turned and walked up the stairs. I stood alone in the living room. The folder was still on the armchair where he had left it. He hadn't even taken the evidence. He didn't want to look at it. I picked up the paper. I looked at the number again. $14,700. Ethan had made his choice. He had chosen the path of least resistance. He had chosen to be a good son rather than a good husband. He thought he had bought peace. He thought he had silenced the problem, but he had made a fatal error. He had assumed that because I was not screaming, I was agreeing. He had assumed that my silence was submission. I won't make a scene, I whispered to the empty room, repeating my promise. If the truth speaks for itself. I walked over to the shredder in the corner of the room. Ethan watched me from the top of the stairs, probably thinking I was destroying the evidence. Moving on. I turned the machine on. I fed a piece of junk mail into it. The gears ground loudly, but I did not shred the report. I slid it back into my bag. If Ethan wanted to protect his reputation, he should have protected his wife first. Now, he was going to lose both. Marjorie wanted a party. She wanted a stage I would give her one, and I would make sure that when the curtain fell, there would be no ambiguity left in this house. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, waiting for the days to pass. The countdown had begun. The next morning, Ethan left for work at 7 o'clock. He kissed me on the cheek, his mood significantly lighter, believing that the storm had passed. He thought he had successfully negotiated a ceasefire. He believed that by asking me to stay silent, he had solved the problem. As soon as his car turned the corner at the end of the block, I locked the front door and engaged the deadbolt. I did not go to work. I called in sick. I made a pot of black coffee, strong enough to wake the dead, and sat down at my desk. I was not there to cry. I was not there to mourn the trust that had just evaporated from my marriage. I was there to work. My job involves analyzing data to predict outcomes and minimize risk. I treated the Marjorie situation exactly like a failing corporate merger. You do not fix a merger with feelings. You fix it with documentation and protocol. My first call was to Summitwell Credit Cooperative. I did not call the general customer service line where they keep you on hold for 40 minutes listening to smooth jazz. I called the fraud department directly. A number I found after 5 minutes of aggressive searching on consumer protection forums. Summitwell Fraud Prevention. This is Marcus, a voice answered. Hello, Marcus, I said, my voice steady and professional. My name is Stella Watson. I am calling to report an unauthorized account opened in my name. I need to file a formal dispute and place a fraud alert on my profile. Marcus began the standard script, asking if I had perhaps forgotten opening the account, or if a family member might have done it. Banks love to assume it is a misunderstanding. It saves them paperwork. I did not authorize this account, I stated clearly. I did not sign the application. The contact information listed is fraudulent. I am requesting a freeze on the funds immediately. I did not mention Marjorie. I did not mention my mother-in-law. In the eyes of the law, the identity of the thief does not matter at this stage. Only the fact of the theft matters, by keeping it impersonal. I was creating a sterile legal record. If I had said, my mother-in-law did it, Marcus might have marked it as a civil domestic dispute, which is code for, we do not want to get involved, by calling it unauthorized fraud. I triggered federal banking protocols. I have flagged the account, Ms. Watson, Marcus said, after 10 minutes of typing. We will send an affidavit of identity theft to your address, the real address you just provided. Thank you, I said. Please also note that I have engaged credit monitoring services as of this morning. I hung up and immediately went to the websites of Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I froze everything. I put a lock on my credit that was tighter than Fort Knox. No one, not even me, could open a store card for a pair of socks without a 10-step verification process. Next came the digital perimeter. I went through every password I owned: email, banking, retirement funds, health insurance. I changed them all to randomized strings of 20 characters that I stored in an encrypted vault. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. If Marjorie tried to guess my password, which I suspected was how she got into my email to confirm the Summitwell application, she would hit a wall. While I was securing the perimeter, my phone buzzed. It was Ren. I have the file. Sending via encrypted signal. A moment later, a PDF arrived. I opened it. It was beautiful in its stark, binary truth. Ren had pulled the raw server logs. It showed the timestamp of the application Tuesday, 4 weeks ago, at 8:45 in the evening. I checked my own calendar. That was the night of the phone call. The night she asked for the zip code extension. The IP address was logged. A quick reverse lookup confirmed it belonged to the residential internet service provider for the wealthy suburb where Marjorie lived. But Ren had gone further. She had included the user agent string from the browser that submitted the application. It identified the device as an iPad Pro, running the latest operating system. I knew that iPad. Marjorie took it everywhere. She used it to judge people's wedding photos on Facebook and manage her stock portfolio. I saved the file to a thumb drive. Then I saved it to the cloud. Then I emailed it to a secret account I had just created. Triple redundancy. The next step was to find the leak. How did she get my social security number? I am careful. I shred my documents. I do not leave tax returns lying around. I sat on the floor of my living room with my phone, scrolling back through 5 years of text messages with Marjorie. It was a tedious, nauseating journey through passive-aggressive comments about my hair, my job, and my lack of interest in the junior league. I found it in a message from 2 years ago. Stella, dear, Ethan mentioned you two are looking into life insurance. I am adding you both to the Callahan family umbrella policy. It is much better coverage than you can get on your own. I just need your social for the underwriter. Send it here. It is safe. I stared at the screen. I remembered that day. I had been busy. I had been grateful that she was helping. I had thought, wow, she is finally accepting me into the family protection plan. I had texted her the 9 digits. I was so stupid. It was not an olive branch. It was a data harvest. She had filed that number away in her little black book, waiting for a rainy day or a day when she needed to buy a $14,000 bar to show off to her friends. I took a screenshot of the text message. Evidence item number 3. By noon, I needed air. I met Naomi for lunch at a bistro near her law firm. Naomi is a corporate litigator. She does not believe in karma. She believes in discovery phases and punitive damages. I slid the folder across the table to her. She opened it, took a bite of her kale salad, and read the entire thing without blinking. Okay, Naomi said, wiping her mouth with a linen napkin. So she committed wire fraud, identity theft, and mail fraud, and your husband wants you to play nice because he's afraid the canapes won't taste as good if his mommy is in handcuffs. Essentially, I said. And you are going to the party, Naomi stated. Ethan begged me to, I said. He thinks if we get through the party, she will pay it off, and we can handle it privately. Naomi laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound that made a waiter jump. Stella, she is not going to pay it off, or if she does, she will hold it over you forever. Remember when I bailed you out of that debt? She will rewrite history if you let this slide. You are giving her permission to own you. I know, I said. That is why I'm building this file. Good, Naomi said. Here is my advice. Do not stop the party. Let it happen. Why? Because right now, this is a private crime, Naomi explained, tapping a manicured nail on the table. It is her word against yours in a quiet room. Ethan can minimize it, but Marjorie is a narcissist. She cannot help herself. She is planning something for this party. I can feel it. She invited the ex-girlfriend. She made a big deal about the gift. She is going to try to humiliate you publicly. She thinks she has the upper hand because she holds the debt. She thinks I do not know about it, I said. Exactly, Naomi smiled, and it was a terrifying expression. She thinks you are walking into an ambush, but if you walk in with a loaded gun, metaphorically speaking, you turn her ambush into a suicide mission. Let her perform. Let her get up on her hind legs and bark, and when she tries to bite, you put her down, publicly, with witnesses. You want me to ruin Ethan's promotion, I said. No, Naomi corrected. I want you to save your own dignity. Ethan is a big boy. If he wanted a peaceful party, he should have married an orphan or stood up to his mother. He did neither. I will be there. I will stand in the corner with my phone. I will record everything. If she slips up, if she admits to anything, we have it on video. I nodded. Naomi was right. Marjorie thrived in the shadows of polite society. Where people were too well-mannered to call out abuse, the only way to stop her was to drag her into the light. After lunch, I went to the company where I worked. I had a scheduled meeting with our internal legal counsel regarding a contract dispute with a vendor. His name was David, a sharp man with gray temples and a love for sailing. After we finished the official business, I asked for a moment off the record. Hypothetically, I started, if a relative used an employee's personal data to open financial accounts without consent, what is the best way to handle it to ensure the employee is not liable for the debt? David looked at me over his glasses. He knew a hypothetical when he heard one. Hypothetically, he said, leaning back, the victim needs to establish a timeline of ignorance. You need to prove you did not know about the debt until a specific date. You need to file a dispute with the institution immediately. Do not make payments. If you make one payment, you are accepting the debt, and do not threaten the perpetrator with criminal charges in exchange for money. That is extortion. Just document the fraud. Let the bank's investigation be the weapon. The bank does not care about family dynamics. They only care about federal compliance. And if the perpetrator confesses, I asked, then you record it, David said, or you have witnesses. A confession trumps everything. I left his office with a clear legal roadmap. Do not threaten. Do not negotiate. Document. When I got home, I did one last sweep. I went to the tracking history of my recent deliveries. I buy a lot of things online: books, vitamins, skincare. I noticed a pattern I had missed. 3 packages in the last month were marked delivered, but I never got them. I had assumed they were stolen by porch pirates. It happens in the city, but I clicked on the detailed tracking for one of them, delivered to front desk/reception. My townhouse does not have a front desk. I cross-referenced the tracking number with the carrier's proof of delivery photo. The photo showed a hand signing a digital pad. The hand had a distinctive ring, a large sapphire surrounded by diamonds. It was Marjorie's ring. She had redirected my packages. She had likely called the carrier, impersonating me, and asked for them to be held or diverted to her address, claiming, I am staying with my mother for a few weeks. It was petty, it was small, but it was part of the pattern. She was erasing my boundaries. She was intercepting my life. I printed the photo of the hand with the ring. Evidence item number 4. I sat down at my desk and assembled the dossier. It was a thin black folder. Page 1. The Summit Well application log with the IP address and the fake gift for husband purpose. Page 2. The timeline of the address change and the hidden billing statements. Page 3. The screenshot of the text message where I gave her my social security number. Page 4. The photo of the open envelope I found in the drawer. Page 5. The tracking photo of her ring signing for my package. Page 6. A printed copy of the Federal Identity Theft Act. With the penalties for wire fraud highlighted in yellow highlighter, I closed the folder. It weighed less than a pound, but it felt dense. It contained the destruction of a matriarch's reputation. I placed it in my work bag. I would carry it with me everywhere until the party. Ethan came home late again. He looked at me nervously, gauging my mood. How was your day? He asked. Productive, I said. I was chopping vegetables for a salad. The knife hit the cutting board with a rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack. "Did you talk to Mom?" he asked. "No," I said. "I am giving her space, like you asked." "Good," Ethan said, relaxing. She texted me. She said she is really excited about Saturday. She said she has a special speech prepared. My hand paused on the knife. A speech, of course. "That sounds nice," I said, resuming the chopping. "I am sure it will be memorable. I really appreciate this, Stella," Ethan said, coming up behind me and kissing my neck. "I know she is a lot, but after Saturday, we will fix the credit thing. I will make her write a check." "Don't worry about the check, Ethan," I said, my voice cool and calm. "I have handled the paperwork." He assumed I meant I had filed the receipt. He had no idea I had filed the ammunition. I wasn't going to the party to celebrate. I wasn't going to the party to make peace. I was going to the party to wait. Marjorie wanted to be the center of attention. She wanted to stand in front of her friends and her son and control the narrative. I would let her. I would let her climb as high as she wanted on that pedestal, because the higher she climbed, the harder she would fall when I pulled the rug of truth out from under her. I rinsed the knife under the cold water. The steel glinted in the kitchen light. I was ready. The week leading up to the party was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Marjorie did not scream. She did not threaten. She operated with the terrifying efficiency of a drone pilot, striking from a distance while keeping her hands perfectly clean. It started with the dress code. 7 days before the event, Marjorie called me while I was driving home from the office. The Bluetooth connection amplified her voice, filling my car with her specific brand of suffocating pleasantry. "Stella, darling," she said, "I am just finalizing the aesthetics for the evening. We are going for a very specific palette for the immediate family, to show unity. I have picked out a lovely sage green for the ladies. It signifies growth and prosperity. I found a boutique in town that has a wrap dress in that shade. I put it on hold for you." I gripped the steering wheel. Sage green. It was a color that made me look like I was recovering from a long illness. It washed me out, turning my skin sallow and my eyes dull. Marjorie knew this. She had made a comment about it 3 Christmases ago when I wore a green scarf. But more importantly, sage green was Kendra's color. Kendra, the ex-girlfriend, had eyes the color of sea glass, and she wore green to emphasize them. "That is very thoughtful, Marjorie," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "But I have already purchased a dress. It is a deep burgundy." The silence on the other end of the line was thick. It was not an empty silence. It was the silence of a teacher waiting for a student to correct a wrong answer. "Burgundy," she repeated. The word sounded like an insult in her mouth. "Oh, I see. Well, that is very bold. It might clash with the floral arrangements. The hydrangeas are blue and white. Burgundy might look a bit aggressive in the family photos. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer to blend in?" "I am sure," I said. "I feel confident in burgundy, and since it is a party for Ethan, I want to look my best for him." "Of course," she said, her voice dropping into a register that was sugary sweet, but laced with poison. "Whatever makes you feel comfortable, dear. If you need to stand out that badly, I suppose we can work around you. We usually do." She hung up. The message was clear. By refusing the uniform, I was marking myself as the outsider. I was the difficult one, the one who ruined the aesthetic. She would use my red dress as a visual marker to show everyone that I did not belong in her pastel world. I did not care. I was not going there to blend in. I was going there to stand my ground. 2 days later, Ren sent me another encrypted update. We had stopped texting directly. She was too paranoid that Marjorie might demand to see her phone. Ren worked in risk management, and she was applying those skills to her own family dynamic. Update on the transaction. The message read, "The vendor is a high-end import company called The Gilded Era. They specialize in reproduction antique furniture. The delivery manifest shows the item was not sent to your house or hers. It was delivered to a climate-controlled storage facility on the outskirts of Grand Rapids. Unit 404. I sat at my kitchen table and processed this. Marjorie had used my credit to buy a $14,700 bar. But she hadn't given it to Ethan yet. She was hiding it. Why, if it was a genuine gift? She would have had it delivered to our house as a surprise. If she was keeping it for herself, she would have sent it to her home. Sending it to a storage unit meant she was staging something. She wanted the item available. But hidden. It hit me then. The timeline. The debt was in my name. The gift was for Ethan. If she presented it at the party, everyone would ooh and ah at her generosity. She would take the credit for the object, while I held the liability for the cost. And if I ever tried to complain, she would point to the physical object and say, "But look, it is for the family." It was money laundering, but with emotional currency. Then came the text from Kendra. I had not spoken to Kendra in 4 years. We were cordial in the way that people are when they are forced to share oxygen at weddings and funerals, but we were not friends. Seeing her name pop up on my screen on a Wednesday afternoon sent a chill down my spine. "Hey, Stella." The text read, "I just wanted to check in before Saturday. Marjorie told me you specifically asked for me to come. That is so sweet of you. She said you wanted to help me and Ethan reminisce about the old days for a toast or something. I just want to make sure I don't overstep. Let me know if you need me to bring any old photos." I stared at the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. Marjorie was playing three-dimensional chess. To Ethan, she had probably said I was jealous and insecure about Kendra. To Kendra, she had said I was desperate to be friends and wanted her there to reminisce. She was setting us up. She wanted Kendra to show up thinking she was the guest of honor. And she wanted me to look like a pushover who was inviting my husband's ex to walk all over me. Or worse, she wanted me to snap at Kendra so she could say, "Look how unstable Stella is." I took a deep breath. I could not blow my cover. If I told Kendra the truth that Marjorie was lying, Kendra would call Marjorie, and Marjorie would know I was on to her. "Hi, Kendra," I typed back. "It is going to be a great night. Just come and enjoy yourself. No need to bring photos. We have plenty." It was neutral. It was safe. But inside, I was seething. Marjorie was moving people around like dolls in a dollhouse, scripting our interactions to maximize her own entertainment. The turning point came on Thursday night. We were at the Callahan house for a mandatory pre-party family dinner. The atmosphere was brittle. Ethan was drinking his scotch too fast. Marjorie was holding court at the head of the table, talking about the caterer's selection of tartlets. After dinner, while the men went to the den to look at architectural blueprints, I went into the kitchen to help clear the plates. Aunt Celeste was there. Celeste was Marjorie's younger sister. She was a woman who seemed to have faded over time, like a photograph left in the sun. She rarely spoke. She wore beige cardigans and always made sure everyone else had a drink before getting water for herself. I had always assumed she was just shy. I was scraping plates into the trash when I felt a hand on my arm. It was a grip of surprising strength. I turned. Celeste was looking at me. Her eyes, usually cast down, were locked on mine. They were sharp, clear, and terrified. "Do not let her do it," Celeste whispered. Her voice was a dry rasp. "Do not let her do what I asked," lowering my voice. Celeste glanced at the doorway to make sure Marjorie was not listening. She pulled me deeper into the corner of the kitchen, behind the oversized refrigerator. "She is planning something big," Celeste said. "I know the signs, the humming, the way she rearranges the seating chart 10 times, the way she looks at you when she thinks you aren't paying attention." "I know," I said. "I am ready." "You think you are ready?" Celeste shook her head. "But you do not know what she is capable of, Stella. Listen to me. 10 years ago, there was a cousin, Robert. He tried to dispute the family trust allocation. He wanted to leave the business. I had never heard of Robert. Marjorie did not just argue with him," Celeste continued, the words spilling out in a rush. "She manufactured a scandal. She forged letters. She started rumors that he was gambling with company funds. She had paperwork. Stella. Fake paperwork that looked so real, even the lawyers were confused for a month. By the time Robert cleared his name, his wife had left him, and he was out of the family. He moved to Ohio. We are not allowed to say his name. My blood ran cold. Fake paperwork. It was her signature move. She didn't just lie. She created documentation to support the lie. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I stayed silent," Celeste said. Tears welled in her eyes. I knew she was lying about Robert. I saw her practicing the signature, but I was afraid. I thought if I stayed quiet, she would leave me alone. But silence does not save you. Stella. Silence is how she wins. It feeds her. She squeezed my arm again, her nails digging into my skin. "She has something on you," Celeste said. "I do not know what it is, but she has been carrying a file around, a white envelope. She puts it in her safe every night. Whatever is in there, she is going to use it to break you. Do not let her." "I won't," I promised. "Thank you." "Celeste." Celeste nodded, wiped her eyes, and instantly reverted to the invisible aunt. She picked up a dish towel and started drying a platter, as if the conversation had never happened. But I had heard her. The warning vibrated in my bones. Marjorie had done this before. She had destroyed a man's life with forged documents. That meant she wasn't just a mean mother-in-law. She was a predator with a methodology. On Friday, the day before the party, I met with Naomi for the final briefing. We sat in her car in the parking lot of a Target, away from prying eyes. "Okay," Naomi said, scrolling through the venue layout on her tablet. "I have checked the lighting. The podium is here. The family table is here. I am going to position myself near the bar. It gives me a direct line of sight to both you and Marjorie, and the acoustics are good for recording." "Do not let her see you filming," I said. "Please," Naomi scoffed. "I am going to hold my phone like I am checking emails. I have an app that records in the background with the screen black. She won't know a thing." "Ethan is cracking," I said, looking out the window at the shoppers pushing red carts. "He is jumping at shadows. He asked me 3 times this morning if I was okay with everything. He knows, deep down, he knows she is going to pull a stunt, but he is terrified that if he confronts her, she will explode." "He is terrified she will blame him," Naomi corrected. "He is afraid she will say, 'Look what your wife did. Ethan, you cannot control her.' That is his greatest fear, being seen as weak." "Well," I said, "tomorrow he's going to have to choose. He can be weak, or he can be honest, but he cannot be both." The waiting was the hardest part. The hours of Friday night dragged like sludge. I sat in our living room, the black folder of evidence tucked into my bag by the door. I watched Ethan pace. He was trying to act normal, watching sports, drinking beer, but his leg was bouncing. He looked at me during a commercial break. "You are wearing the burgundy dress?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Mom is going to be annoyed," he said. "Your mom committed a felony in my name." "Ethan," I said calmly. "She can survive a color clash." He flinched. He hated when I mentioned the credit line. He wanted to pretend it had vanished into the ether. "Right," he mumbled. "Right. Just let's get through tomorrow. Then we deal with it." "We will," I said. At 11 o'clock that night, just as I was turning off the bedside lamp, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Marjorie. I picked it up. The screen was bright in the dark room. "Get some rest. Stella, you will need your energy. I have prepared a very personal surprise for you tomorrow, something that will finally clear the air between us. I think everyone needs to know exactly where we stand." I read the text twice. A very personal surprise. Clear the air. She wasn't hiding it anymore. She was teasing it. She was so confident in her plan, so sure that her dossier of lies would crush me, that she was taunting me beforehand. She thought I would read that text and panic. She thought I would show up to the party trembling, ready to beg for mercy. She had no idea. I put the phone down. I did not reply. I turned off the light and lay in the dark, listening to Ethan's breathing next to me. He was asleep, or pretending to be. Tomorrow, Marjorie was going to walk onto a stage and pull a weapon out of an envelope. She thought it was a gun. She didn't realize she was holding a grenade with the pin already pulled. And I was the only one who knew how to count the seconds until the explosion. I closed my eyes. I slept the sleep of the righteous. The stage was set. The players were in position, and for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't afraid of Marjorie Callahan. I was waiting for her. The venue Marjorie had selected was a private event space in downtown Grand Rapids called the Atrium. It was a glass-walled conservatory that smelled of money, humidity, and lilies. Sunlight poured in through the vaulted ceiling, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, making everything look ethereal and golden. It was the kind of place where people spoke in hushed tones not out of respect, but because they were afraid of breaking something that cost more than their car. I walked in at 2 o'clock, holding Ethan's arm. His bicep was tense, hard as a rock under his suit jacket. He was smiling, waving to people, playing the part of the successful director, but I could feel the tremor in his muscles. He was vibrating with anxiety. "Relax," I whispered to him. Though I was the one walking into a firing squad, "It is just a party." "I know," he muttered, his smile fixed in a rictus of joy. "I just want it to go smoothly. Please, Stella, just flow with it." "I am flowing," I said. "I am a river." The room was already full. There were at least 60 people there, men in navy blazers, women in floral prints and pastels. Waiters circulated with silver trays of crab cakes and sparkling water. A string quartet was playing a sanitized version of a pop song in the corner. And then there was Marjorie. She was standing near the center of the room, positioned perfectly to intercept every guest who entered. She looked magnificent and terrifying. She wore a structured cream-colored suit that made her look like a politician on election night. Her hair was immovable. Her jewelry was understated, but heavy gold and pearls that probably weighed 5 pounds. She was operating the room like a machine. I watched her from the entrance. She would grab a guest's hand, pull them close, whisper something that made them laugh, and then pivot them toward the bar before moving to the next target. It was a masterclass in social dominance. She was not just hosting, she was farming the crowd for validation. As we stepped further into the room, the visual trap she had set sprung shut. I looked around and realized that nearly every woman in the room, including the cousins and the aunts, was wearing some variation of soft green, mint, seafoam, sage. It was a sea of soothing, botanical colors that matched the plants in the conservatory perfectly. And then there was me, in my deep, blood-red burgundy dress. I stood out like a fresh wound. "Oh, look," I heard someone whisper behind me. "Bold choice." Ethan flinched. He noticed it too. I was the visual dissonance. I was the sour note in the symphony. Then I saw Kendra. She was standing near the gift table, chatting with one of Ethan's old college roommates. She turned when we walked in, and my stomach gave a small, involuntary lurch. She was wearing a wrap dress in the exact shade of sage green that Marjorie had tried to force on me. She looked beautiful. She looked appropriate. She looked like she belonged in the photo. She looked like the wife Ethan was supposed to have. Kendra saw me, and her expression faltered. She looked down at her dress, then at mine, and then her eyes darted to Marjorie. She realized it, too. She had been costumed. Marjorie had dressed her up to play the role of the correct partner, making me look like the intruder. Marjorie spotted us. Her face lit up with a beam of delight that was so bright it felt radioactive. She glided toward us, arms outstretched. "There they are," she announced, her voice carrying over the string quartet. The man of the hour. And Stella, she reached Ethan first, hugging him tightly, kissing both his cheeks. She whispered something in his ear that made him stand up straighter, like a soldier receiving orders. Then she turned to me. Her eyes scanned my dress. For a microsecond, there was a flicker of annoyance, but she buried it instantly under a layer of pity. "Stella," she cooed, pulling me into a hug. Her body was stiff. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and hairspray. She squeezed me hard, trapping my arms against my sides so I could not pull away. "I see you stuck with the red," she whispered into my ear. Her voice was low. meant only for me. Actually, it is better this way. It will make the family photos so much easier to edit later. We can just adjust the contrast. Or crop. She pulled back, beaming at me, her hands still gripping my shoulders, to the room. It looked like a mother-in-law sharing a tender moment. To me, it was a declaration of intent. She was telling me that I was temporary, that I could be cropped out. Happy to help with the composition. Marjorie? I said, smiling back with equal fake warmth. Go, mingle, she commanded, giving me a little shove. There are so many people dying to see you. I drifted away from her, my hand instinctively going to my side where my bag hung. Inside was the black folder. I tapped it once, just to remind myself it was there. Go ahead. Marjorie, I thought, crop me. See what happens. I made my rounds. I shook hands. I accepted congratulations on Ethan's behalf. I felt the eyes on me. The guests were whispering. They knew something was up. Marjorie had been priming them. I could hear snippets of conversation as I passed groups of people. Always so difficult. Ethan looks tired. Heard she spends a lot. She had been planting seeds. She had probably spent the last hour telling worried mother stories about my spending habits, setting the stage for the credit card debt revelation she thought was coming. She wanted them to look at me and see a gold digger, so that when she revealed the debt, they would nod and say, "We knew it." I found Naomi near the bar. She was nursing a soda water, her phone already in her hand. She was wearing a navy suit that looked like armor. The sage green is a nice touch, Naomi murmured without moving her lips. Very Handmaid's Tale meets Better Homes and Gardens. She told me it makes me easier to crop out of photos, I said, grabbing a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. I needed the bubbles, not the alcohol. She is a monster, Naomi said, impressed. But she is sloppy. Look at her. I looked. Marjorie was over by the cake, directing the photographer. She was moving Kendra into the frame with Ethan. She was physically positioning them together, laughing, touching Kendra's arm, touching Ethan's shoulder. She was building a tableau of the life she wanted. Where is Ren? I asked. Over by the emergency exit. Naomi nodded toward the back. I saw Ren. She was standing with her back against the glass wall, looking like she wanted to phase through it. She caught my eye and gave a tiny, terrified nod. She was holding her purse against her chest like a shield. She had the documents, too. We were a redundant system. The clock ticked toward 3 o'clock. The tension in the room was rising. The pleasant chatter was starting to sound shrill. Marjorie was checking her watch. She was signaling the waiters to clear the floor. Ethan came over to me. He looked sweaty. Mom wants to do the speeches now, he said. Before the cake. Okay, I said. Are you ready? I guess, he said. He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. You promise you won't, if she says something weird. Just let it go for me. I looked at my husband. He was begging me to be a doormat. He was begging me to let his mother humiliate me so he could have his party. I promise I will tell the truth. Ethan, I said. He nodded, hearing what he wanted to hear. Okay, good. Let's go. Marjorie walked to the front of the room. There was a small riser set up, a mini stage with a microphone stand. She tapped her spoon against her glass. Ting, ting, ting. The sound cut through the room. The conversation died instantly. The string quartet stopped mid-measure. If I could have everyone's attention, Marjorie said. Her voice was amplified, rich and confident. Please, gather round. Closer, everyone. We are all family here. The crowd shuffled forward, forming a semicircle around the stage. I stood next to Ethan. Marjorie beckoned us forward. Ethan, Stella, come up here, she said. We stepped onto the riser. I felt the heat of the spotlight. I felt the weight of 60 pairs of eyes. Marjorie put her arm around Ethan. She did not put her arm around me. She left me standing a foot apart, visually separating us. We are all so proud of Ethan, she began. She gave a short, polished speech about his work ethic, his childhood, his dedication. It was a good speech, but I knew it was just the preamble. "But," she said, her voice shifting tone, "as a mother, I also worry. I worry about the future. I worry about the choices my children make. And in the spirit of total honesty, because we believe in honesty in this family, I decided to give my daughter-in-law a very special gift today." The room went deadly silent. This was off script. This was the personal surprise she had texted me about. Ethan shifted his weight. He looked at his mother nervously. "Mom." "Hush, Ethan," she said playfully, patting his cheek. "This is between the girls." She reached behind the podium and pulled out the white envelope. It was thick. It was crisp. "Stella," she said, turning to face me. The smile on her face was frozen, a mask of pure malice. "You and I have had our differences, and I think it is time we address them. I have spent the last month compiling some thoughts, some observations." She held the envelope up for the crowd to see. "I call this," she announced, her voice booming, "47 reasons my son should divorce you." For 2 seconds, the air left the room. It was such a shocking, brutal thing to say at a party. Then, Marjorie laughed, a light, bubbling laugh. "Oh, do not look so shocked. It is a roast. We are roasting her. Come on. It is funny." The cue was given. The Queen had laughed, so the court must laugh. A ripple of relief went through the room. "Oh, it is a joke. It is just a roast." The guests started to chuckle. The chuckle turned into laughter. I looked at Ethan. He was looking at the crowd. He saw them laughing. He saw that the tension had broken. He made a choice. He laughed. He threw his head back and laughed. 47, he said, playing along. "Wow, Mom, did you double space it?" The crowd roared. They loved it. They loved that he was in on the joke. I stood there. I did not move. I did not smile. I looked at Marjorie. She was watching me with glittering eyes. She was waiting for me to crumble. She was waiting for me to run away crying, or to yell at her so she could look like the victim of a crazy daughter-in-law. She held the envelope out to me. "Go on, take it," she said, her voice dripping with challenge. "Unless you are afraid to read it." I reached out. My hand was steady. I took the envelope. It felt heavy. It felt like a brick. I looked at the crowd. They were still grinning, waiting for the performance. They thought I was going to read a list of funny habits, like she steals the blankets or she burns the toast. They didn't know that Marjorie had put real poison in there. They didn't know she had listed my financial irresponsibility. They didn't know she had included the crime she had committed. Disguised as an accusation. I looked at Naomi. She was holding her phone up, steady as a rock. I looked at Ren. She had stepped away from the wall. She was watching me, holding her breath. I looked at Ethan. He was still smiling, looking at his shoes, avoiding my gaze. He had abandoned me. I turned back to Marjorie. "Thank you, Marjorie," I said into the microphone. My voice was calm. It was the voice of the person who knows where the bodies are buried. "I would love to read this." I opened the flap. I pulled out the papers. The crowd quieted down, anticipating the punchline. Marjorie smirked, crossing her arms, confident that she had just checkmated me. She thought she was holding the gun. She didn't realize she had just handed it to me, loaded, safety off, and pointed directly at her own heart. I looked down at the paper. I skipped past the first page. I found reason number 23. I looked up. "Shall we begin?" I asked. The microphone felt cold and heavy in my hand, like the handle of a weapon I had finally decided to use. I stood on the riser, looking out at the sea of faces. 60 people were waiting for me to be a good sport. They were waiting for me to laugh at myself, to validate Marjorie's cruelty by pretending it was affection. Marjorie stood a few feet away, her hands clasped in front of her cream-colored suit, her chin tilted up in a pose of benevolent superiority. She looked like a queen who had just graciously allowed the jester to speak. I smoothed the paper out on the podium. The font was large, easy to read. Marjorie wanted to make sure I didn't stumble over my own humiliation. "Reason number 4, I read. my voice amplified and clear, echoing slightly off the glass walls of the conservatory. Stella believes that checking her email constitutes a romantic evening. She is married to her laptop, not my son. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. It was easy laughter. It was the kind of thing people said about career women all the time. I looked at Ethan. He was grinning, nodding at his college friends. He caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up. See, his expression said, "It is not so bad. Just roll with it." I looked back at the list. Reason number 9, I continued. She refuses to learn the family recipes because she claims she does not have the time, yet she always has time to buy expensive takeout that lacks nutritional value. More laughter. Louder this time. The guests were relaxing. They had decided that this was safe territory. It was just a mother-in-law complaining about domestic skills. It was a trope. It was comedy. Marjorie took a half step forward, beaming. She turned to the crowd, playing to her audience. "I tried to teach her how to make a proper roast," she announced, her voice projecting without the mic. But she said the smoke alarm was a better timer than a clock. The room roared. Marjorie was shining. She was the star of her own show, and I was just the prop she was using to get the laughs. "Read another one," Ethan called out. He was laughing harder than anyone else. He was drunk on the relief that I wasn't making a scene. "Read number 12. That one is funny." I looked at him, my husband, the man who had promised to protect me. He was standing there, flushed and happy, urging me to participate in my own public dressing down because it was easier than telling his mother to stop. "Okay," I said. "I will read another one." I let my eyes drift down the page. I skipped past number 12, which was about my hair. I skipped past number 15, which was about my lack of interest in the country club. I stopped at number 23. My finger rested on the paragraph. I read it silently first. It was written in Marjorie's distinct voice, arrogant, accusatory, and fatally careless. She had written it because she wanted to prove that I was oblivious. She wanted to prove that she was the one really taking care of Ethan, even if she had to break the rules to do it. She was so convinced of her own righteousness that she hadn't realized she was typing out a confession. I looked up. The smile vanished from my face. I did not replace it with a frown. I replaced it with nothing. My face became a blank, unreadable mask. The change in my demeanor was subtle, but effective. The laughter in the front row died down first. People saw my expression and nudged their neighbors. The silence spread backward like a wave, rolling from the stage to the bar. Marjorie sensed the shift. Her smile faltered. She looked at me, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. She nodded at the paper, silently commanding me to keep the mood light. "You might want to listen closely to this one," I said. My voice was lower now, intimate, yet it reached every corner of the room. Reason number 23. I paused. I let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. I let them hear the hum of the ventilation system. I let them hear the ice clinking in a glass at the back of the room. Reason number 23, I read, keeping my eyes on the text. Stella is so financially irresponsible and disconnected from our family's reality that she does not even realize I had to step in and fix things. She is completely unaware that I used her identity to open a line of credit last week, just so my son could have the gift he deserves. I stopped reading. I looked up. For a heartbeat. There was absolute silence. It was not the silence of anticipation. It was the silence of confusion. The guests were processing the words. Used her identity. Open a line of credit, then. A murmur started. A low, confused buzzing sound. Wait, what? Someone said from the middle of the room. Did she say? Another voice trailed off. Marjorie's face had gone the color of old paper. Her mouth was slightly open. The realization of what she had written and what I had just read out loud hit her like a physical blow. She had written that list in a fit of pique, late at night, wanting to list every way she was superior to me. She had thought the joke was my ignorance. She hadn't thought about the legality of the act itself. She took a step toward me. Her hands were reaching out, her fingers hooked into claws. "Give me that," she hissed. Her voice was high and thin, panic strangling her vocal cords. "You are reading it wrong. Give it to me." She lunged for the paper. I took a smooth step back. I did not flinch. I did not cower. I simply moved out of her reach, keeping the microphone between us. "I am not reading it wrong. Marjorie," I said into the mic, "I am reading exactly what you typed. Shall I read it again?" I used her identity to open a line of credit. "It was a joke," Marjorie shrieked. She turned to the crowd, her hands fluttering wildly near her neck. "It is a roast. It is hyperbole. I was just making a point about how she never pays attention to bills." "Is it?" I asked. I reached into the tote bag I had placed at my feet. I pulled out the black folder. It was sleek, professional, and terrifyingly real. I placed the folder on the podium, right on top of her list of insults. I opened it. "Because according to the fraud department at Summitwell Credit Cooperative," I said, my voice cutting through her panic like a scalpel. "It is not a joke. This is the transaction log from 10 days ago." I held up the first page. It was the blown-up printout of the application, with the timestamp and the IP address highlighted in neon yellow. "This is the application submitted from your home IP address," I said. I dropped the page onto the floor. It floated down and landed near Ethan's feet. I held up the second page. "This is the change of address form," I continued. Relentless. "Where you diverted the billing statements to your personal P.O. box, so I wouldn't see them." I dropped that page too. "And this," I said, holding up the screenshot of the text message from 2 years ago, "is the text message where I gave you my social security number for insurance purposes, the same number used on this fraudulent application." The room was frozen. No one was drinking. No one was eating. The waiters had stopped moving. This was not a party anymore. It was a courtroom. Marjorie stood center stage, stripped of her armor. She looked small. She looked old. She looked at the guests, searching for an ally, searching for someone to laugh and say it was all a misunderstanding, but no one met her eyes. They were looking at the papers on the floor. They were looking at me. "Stella," Marjorie gasped, "you are ruining the party. How could you—" "I didn't write the list. Marjorie," I said softly, "you did. You wrote it down. You printed it out. You handed it to me in front of 60 witnesses. I turned to Ethan. He was staring at the paper near his shoe. He looked like he had been hit in the chest with a sledgehammer. He looked from the paper to his mother. The denial was breaking. The excuses were dissolving. "Mom," he said. His voice was a child's voice. "Mom, tell me you didn't actually open an account in her name." "I did it for you," Marjorie snapped, her voice cracking. "I bought the bar, the mahogany bar you wanted. I was going to pay it off. Stella is making a mountain out of a molehill." "You used her social security number," Ethan said. He sounded dazed. That is fraud. Mom, that is a crime." "It is family!" Marjorie screamed. She stomped her foot, the heavy pearls at her neck bouncing. "There is no crime in family. I can do what I want. I am the one who holds this family together." Her confession rang through the conservatory. I can do what I want. That was it. That was the core of it. She believed she was above the law because she was Marjorie Callahan. I looked at the crowd. I saw Naomi in the corner, her phone still raised. She gave me a tiny, grim nod. We had it. We had the confession. We had the motive. We had the outburst. I looked back at Marjorie. She was panting, her chest heaving. She realized too late that she had just screamed her entitlement for everyone to hear. "You are right, Marjorie," I said. "You are the one who holds the family together, but you just used illegal glue." I closed the black folder. I picked up the white envelope with her 47 reasons and tucked it inside my folder. I was keeping the original. "I think I'm done reading now," I said. I stepped off the riser. The sound of my heels on the floor was the only noise in the room. The crowd parted for me. They didn't just move aside. They recoiled. As if I were radioactive, or perhaps as if I were a holy figure they were afraid to touch. Marjorie stood alone on the stage, surrounded by the wreckage of her own arrogance. She looked at Ethan, waiting for him to run to her, to comfort her, to yell at me. But Ethan didn't move. He stood there, staring at his mother as if he were seeing a stranger. The realization was washing over him, slow and painful. He wasn't seeing the difficult, loving mother he had defended for years. He was seeing a woman who had stolen his wife's identity and then laughed about it in public. He was seeing the monster I had been trying to show him for 5 years. I walked past Ren. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. It was a smile of terrifying relief. I walked past the cake, untouched and perfect. I walked toward the exit. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel the structure of the Callahan family collapsing behind me, not with a bang, but with the rustle of paper drifting across a stage. The silence that had fallen over the conservatory did not last. It was shattered not by a scream, but by the sound of a paper landing on the floor. I had dropped the evidence, and now the truth was sitting there, undeniable and stark against the polished hardwood. Marjorie stood on the riser, her chest heaving, her eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal looking for an exit that did not exist. She had expected a roast. She had expected a laugh. She had not expected a trial. I had turned to leave, but the gravity of the room pulled me back. I stopped near the edge of the crowd. I needed to see this. I needed to witness the moment the structure finally collapsed. Marjorie tried to laugh again. It was a wet, jagged sound. "Well," she stammered, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "That was quite a performance, Stella. Very dramatic, but we all know how you like to exaggerate." She was trying to reset the narrative. She was trying to gaslight 60 people at once. Then, a voice cut through the air. It was not loud, but it was shaking with a terrifying kind of courage. "It is not an exaggeration. Mom." Ren stepped forward. She did not look at me. She looked at her mother. Ren, who had spent 30 years making herself invisible, walked into the center of the circle. She was clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles were white, but she did not stop. "Ren," Marjorie snapped, her eyes narrowing. "Do not be ridiculous. Go check on the cake." "I saw the logs," Ren said. Her voice gained strength, fueled by years of suppressed ethics. "I work in compliance, Mom. You know that? I saw the application. I saw the IP address. It came from your house. You changed the billing address to your P.O. box, so Stella wouldn't see the statements. That is not an exaggeration. That is wire fraud." The words hung in the air. Wire fraud. Spoken by her own daughter. Marjorie recoiled as if slapped. "You ungrateful little—" She stopped herself. Remembering the audience, she forced a smile that looked like a grimace of pain. "Ren is confused. She has been under so much stress at work." "I am not confused," Ren said, her voice trembling but clear. "And I am not the only one who knows." From the back of the room, near the buffet table, Aunt Celeste stood up. She was holding a glass of water, and her hand was steady. Celeste, the ghost of the family, the woman who had faded into the beige wallpaper of the Callahan dynasty, took a step forward. "How many times, Marjorie?" Celeste asked. Her voice was raspy from disuse, but it carried a weight that silenced the few people who were still whispering. Marjorie looked at her sister. "Celeste, sit down. How many times have you done this?" Celeste repeated, louder this time. She walked toward the stage, her eyes locked on her sister. "You did it to Robert. You forged those letters to get him out of the company. We all knew. But we were too scared to say anything." "Who else? Did you do it to Cousin Sarah when she tried to move to Chicago? Did you do it to me when I wanted to sell the lake house?" The room erupted into murmurs. This was no longer about a credit card. This was an excavation of family history. Guests were exchanging looks of realization. They were replaying old rumors, old scandals, and suddenly seeing the common denominator standing in the cream-colored suit. Marjorie was losing them. She could feel it. She pivoted, looking for a soft target. someone she could manipulate to regain the upper hand. Her eyes landed on Kendra. Kendra was standing near the front, looking horrified. She was still wearing the sage green dress, looking like the perfect Callahan accessory. Marjorie reached out to her. "Kendra, darling," Marjorie pleaded, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "You know me. You know I would never do anything to hurt the family. Tell them how close we are. Tell Stella she is being paranoid." Kendra looked at Marjorie's outstretched hand. Then she looked at me. Then she looked down at her dress, the dress Marjorie had picked out for her. The realization hit her face like a physical wave. "You told me Stella invited me," Kendra said. Her voice was cold. "She did," Marjorie lied effortlessly. "She wanted you here." "No," Kendra said, taking a step back. "I texted Stella. She was polite, but she didn't invite me. You did. You told me she wanted to reminisce. You told me to wear this color." She gestured violently at her dress. "You used me. You brought me here to make her uncomfortable. You brought me here as a prop. I brought you here because you belong here," Marjorie shouted, losing her composure. "Because you would have been a better wife. You understand our world." "I understand that you are a liar," Kendra said. She turned around, grabbed her purse from the table, and walked straight toward the exit. As she passed me, she didn't look angry. She looked apologetic. She whispered a single word: "Sorry." Marjorie was alone on the stage now. Her allies had fled. Her family was turning. She had one card left to play, the victim card. She brought her hands to her face and let out a sob. It was a practiced, theatrical sob. "I was trying to protect him," she wailed, pointing a shaking finger at Ethan. "I was trying to protect my son. You do not understand. She is bleeding him dry. She does not understand money. She does not understand our legacy. I had to take control because she is ruining everything." She turned her venom on me. Her face twisted into a mask of pure ugliness. "She is a gold digger," Marjorie screamed, abandoning all pretense of civility. "She married him for the name. She married him for the status. I opened that credit line to prove she wouldn't even notice the money was missing. I did it to test her. And look, she is trying to send me to jail for buying a gift. She is the villain here. She is tearing this family apart." The room was silent, but it was not the silence of agreement. It was the silence of disgust. Ethan stepped forward. He had been standing still for what felt like an hour, staring at the papers on the floor. He looked up now. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear. The fog of his childhood, the fog of obligation and fear, had finally lifted. He walked up the riser. He stood between his mother and the crowd. "Mom," he said. His voice was low, devoid of the pleasing tone he usually used with her. "Ethan!" Marjorie gasped, clutching his arm. Tell them I love you. Tell them I was just trying to help." Ethan looked at her hand on his arm. He gently, but firmly, removed it. "You used my wife's social security number to commit fraud," Ethan said. He spoke slowly, as if explaining gravity to a toddler. "It was a test," Marjorie insisted. "I was testing her." "It was not a test," Ethan said. "It was a crime, and you didn't do it to protect me. You did it to control me." "Ethan, you invited Kendra to control me," Ethan continued, his voice rising. "You chose the venue to control me. You wrote that list." He pointed to the envelope I had left on the podium. "To humiliate her. You wanted to break her so she would leave. And you could have your son back. You wanted me all to yourself." "I am your mother," Marjorie screamed. "I am the only one who truly loves you." "If you loved me," Ethan said, "you would respect the woman I chose. You didn't protect me, Mom. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed yourself." He turned to the crowd. He looked at his boss, at his colleagues, at his friends. "I am sorry," Ethan said to the room. "I am sorry you had to witness this. The party is over. Please go." Marjorie looked around. She saw the faces. She saw the judgment. and for the first time in her life, she saw people pulling out their phones. They weren't filming me. They weren't filming the crazy daughter-in-law. They were filming her. They were recording the breakdown of the great Marjorie Callahan. She realized she had lost the narrative. She turned to me. Her eyes were black holes of hate. "You planned this," she hissed. "You set me up." I looked at her from the floor. I did not raise my voice. I did not step closer. I just held up my empty hands. I didn't write a single word. "Marjorie," I said. "You wrote it?" "I just read it." I turned and walked out. I walked out into the cool afternoon air. My hands were not shaking. I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. It was the feeling of a heavy coat being taken off after a long winter. I waited by the car. A few minutes later, Ren came out, then Celeste, then Naomi, who gave me a fierce hug and showed me her phone. "I got it all," she whispered. "Every second." Ethan came out last. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. He walked over to the car, loosened his tie, and leaned against the hood. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just breathed. "I am sorry," he said finally. He didn't look at me. He looked at the sky. "I know," I said. "She is sick," he said. "I never saw it. I saw it, but I didn't see it." "You saw what you needed to see to survive," I said. "But now you have to choose." "I already chose," he said. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. He tapped the screen 3 times. "I blocked her." We drove home in silence. It was a heavy silence, but it was clean. It was the silence of a battlefield after the cannons have stopped firing. That evening, the digital fallout began. My phone started pinging at 6 o'clock. It started with a text from Aunt Celeste. "Thank you. I have blocked her number. I am going to sell the lake house. She can sue me if she wants." Then a message from a cousin I barely knew. "That took guts. We are with you. Nobody is going to the brunch tomorrow." Then, shockingly, a message from Ethan's boss's wife. "Stella, I just wanted to say that handled yourself with incredible grace today. If you need a recommendation for a forensic accountant, I have a contact." The family was rallying, not because they loved me, necessarily, but because the beast had been wounded, the predator had been exposed. And suddenly the herd realized they didn't have to be afraid anymore. They realized that Marjorie's power came from their silence, and the moment I spoke, her power evaporated. Ethan sat on the couch, staring at his phone. "Uncle Mark just texted. He says he is pulling the trust management away from her. He says what she admitted to the fraud, it violates the fiduciary clause of the estate." "Good," I said. I was sitting at the dining table, nursing a cup of tea. But Marjorie was not done. I knew she wasn't done. A narcissist does not accept defeat. They seek revenge. At 9 o'clock, my work email pinged. I had notifications set up on my phone. I saw the subject line and felt a cold spike of adrenaline. Subject: formal complaint. Regarding employee conduct, Stella Watson. It was sent to the HR department of Redwood Meridian Analytics. It was carbon copied to my boss, and because Marjorie wanted to be thorough, she had copied me. I opened the email. It was long. It was rambling, but it was dangerous. "To whom it may concern, I am writing to report the unethical and unstable behavior of your employee, Stella Watson, today, at a public event. She orchestrated a scene of harassment and blackmail. She has been stealing family funds and, when confronted, created forged documents to frame me. A respected member of the community, she is mentally unstable and a liability to your firm. I have evidence that she has been using company resources to pursue a personal vendetta. She was trying to torch my career. She knew she had lost the family. So she was attacking the one thing I had that was purely mine, my job. She was accusing me of the very things she had done: theft, forgery, instability." "Ethan," I said, "read this." He read the email over my shoulder. His jaw tightened. "She is insane," he said. "She sent this to your boss." "Yes," I said. "She is trying to get me fired." "I will call him," Ethan said immediately. "I will call your boss. I will tell him the truth. I will send him the video Naomi took. No, I said. We stick to the plan. We do not react emotionally. We react legally. My phone buzzed again. It was Naomi. Don't freak out, but I have a contact at the precinct. A call just came in on the non-emergency line. A Marjorie Callahan is asking how to file a restraining order and a report for criminal defamation against a family member. She is trying to beat you to the punch. I looked at the text. Marjorie was doubling down. She was going to try to use the legal system to silence me. She thought that because she had money and connections, she could spin the story. She thought she could walk into a police station and charm them into believing she was the victim. She didn't know I had the Summitwell file. She didn't know I had the IP logs. She didn't know I had the text messages. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. She wants a war, I said. Ethan stood up and came to stand beside me. He didn't touch me, but he stood close enough that I could feel his heat. She wants a war, he agreed. But she forgot one thing. What? I asked. She forgot that you are better at paperwork than she is, Ethan said. I smiled. It was a small, tight smile. Naomi, I texted back. Let her file. Let her put her statement on record. When she lies to the police, it is not just defamation anymore. It is perjury. The party was just the opening act. The dinner was over. Now, the real carving began. Marjorie wanted to take this to the authorities fine. I would meet her there, and I would bring every single receipt. The fallout from the party did not result in a quiet surrender. Marjorie Callahan did not know how to surrender. She only knew how to escalate. 3 days after the incident at the conservatory, while Ethan and I were sitting at our kitchen table compiling the final identity theft affidavit, a process server knocked on our door. He handed me a thick envelope. Marjorie had filed a civil complaint against me for defamation of character, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and harassment. In her version of reality, legally documented in these papers, I had staged the entire event to humiliate a grieving mother who was only trying to help her family. She was demanding a public apology, a retraction of my slanderous statements, and in a twist that was almost funny damages for the ruined catering costs. She was trying to bury the truth under a mountain of legal noise. She thought that if she screamed victim loud enough, the world would forget she had stolen my social security number. She thought I would be too scared of the legal fees to fight back. She thought I would beg Ethan to make it stop. She was wrong. We did not respond on Facebook. We did not send angry texts. We did not gossip with the cousins. We went silent. We let her file her motions. We let her think she was winning the public relations war. And in that silence, we finalized the criminal complaint with the Summitwell Fraud Department. 2 weeks later, we met in a mediation room at a law firm in downtown Grand Rapids. It was a neutral ground, chosen to avoid a full court trial if a settlement could be reached. The room was cold, lined with gray carpet and smelling of furniture polish. Marjorie arrived 10 minutes late. It was a power move. She swept in wearing a black suit, looking like a mourning widow. She was flanked by her family lawyer, a man named Mr. Henderson, who looked tired before the meeting even began. Marjorie did not look at me. She looked at Ethan with watery eyes, trying to catch his gaze, trying to initiate the silent language of guilt they had shared for decades. Ethan did not look up from his notepad. My client is willing to drop the defamation suit. Mr. Henderson began, opening his briefcase, provided that Ms. Watson signs a non-disclosure agreement regarding the events of the party and issues a written statement clarifying that the financial matter was a misunderstanding between family members. It was incredible. She was offering to forgive me for catching her, my lawyer. A sharp woman named Sarah, who Naomi had recommended, didn't even blink. She placed a single document on the mahogany table. There will be no non-disclosure agreement, Sarah said, and there is no misunderstanding. We are here to discuss the restitution for the $14,700 fraudulently charged to my client, and the terms of the restraining order we are filing. Marjorie scoffed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. Restraining order. Do not be dramatic, I am his mother. You cannot restrain a mother from her son. We can, I said, and we will. This is ridiculous, Marjorie said, turning to Mr. Henderson. Show them the email where I offered to pay for the bar. It proves intent to gift. There was no theft. Marjorie, I said, this isn't about the money anymore. It is about the method. Sarah slid the black folder across the table. We had made copies, one for Mr. Henderson, one for the mediator. This is the document you distributed at the party, Sarah said. Exhibit A, 47 reasons my son should divorce you. Specifically, item number 23. Marjorie waved a hand dismissively. That was a joke. It was a roast. It is satire. You cannot use a joke in a legal proceeding. We are not using it as a joke, Sarah said. We are using it as a confession. You wrote, in your own words, that you used Stella's identity, and here is Exhibit B. Sarah laid down the affidavit from Wren. This is a sworn statement from the compliance officer at Summitwell Credit Cooperative, Sarah continued, confirming that the account exists, that the billing address was altered to your personal post office box, and that the digital signature does not match Stella Watson's known signature. Marjorie stiffened. Wren, she spat the name out. Wren is confused. She is easily manipulated. Wren is a licensed auditor, Sarah corrected, and she is prepared to testify in criminal court if we take this to the district attorney, which we are prepared to do. Mr. Henderson looked at the affidavit, then he looked at Marjorie. He closed his file slightly. He knew. He knew his client was lying, and he knew we had the smoking gun, but we weren't done. We also have a witness regarding the pattern of behavior, Sarah said. If this goes to trial, we will call Kendra Miller to the stand. Marjorie's eyes went wide. Kendra. Why would you call Kendra? To establish mens rea, Sarah said calmly. To establish the intent to manipulate and deceive, you lured Ms. Miller to the party under false pretenses, telling her that Stella had invited her, in order to stage a scene of emotional distress. It establishes a pattern of using people as props in your narrative. It destroys your credibility as a reliable witness. Marjorie looked trapped. She looked at the door, as if expecting Kendra to walk in right then. She realized that her perfect daughter-in-law had turned on her too. You are turning everyone against me, Marjorie whispered. You have poisoned my family. You poisoned them yourself. Marjorie, a voice said from the back of the room. We all turned. Aunt Celeste was sitting in the corner chair. She had been so quiet I think Marjorie had forgotten she was there. Celeste had asked to come. She said she needed to see it end. Celeste, Marjorie said, what are you doing here? I am here to ensure you do not lie your way out of this one. Celeste said. She stood up, clutching her handbag. Like you did with Robert. Shut up, Marjorie hissed. No, Celeste said. I will not. You are not afraid of being wrong. Marjorie, you never have been. You are only afraid of being seen. And now, we see you. We see the small, scared person who has to steal names and forge letters just to feel important. The room was silent. Marjorie looked stripped. Her armor of wealth and status was gone. She was just a woman who had committed a crime and got caught. But she had one last defense, the technicality. You cannot prove it was me at the keyboard, Marjorie said, grasping at straws. Anyone could have used my Wi-Fi. It could have been a guest. It could have been Stella herself, trying to frame me. You have no proof I typed those numbers. I looked at Ethan. He nodded. It was time for the final card. Actually, I said, we do. I pulled out the last piece of paper. It was a log from the internal messaging system of Summitwell's two-factor authentication server. Wren had dug deep. She had found the handshake data, the invisible digital conversation between the bank and the user during the setup process. When the account was opened, I said, sliding the paper toward her. The system asked for a secondary phone number to verify the identity. You couldn't use mine, because I would get the text. You couldn't use your main cell, because it is linked to your other accounts and might trigger a conflict. Marjorie went pale. So you used the landline in your pool house, I said. The one you think is unlisted, the one you use for your private calls, the number ending in 4402. I pointed to the log. There it was. The verification code sent to exactly that number, at exactly the time the application was submitted. That number is registered to the Marjorie Callahan Living Trust, I said. It is not a guest. It is not me. It is you. You verified the fraud with your own phone line. Mr. Henderson sighed. He actually sighed out loud. He closed his briefcase completely. He leaned over to Marjorie and whispered, "We need to settle, now, if they give this to the police. You are looking at federal charges. There is no defense for this." Marjorie looked at the paper. She looked at the phone number. The number she thought was her secret safe line. She realized that the technology she barely understood had betrayed her. She realized that every digital footprint she left was a breadcrumb leading straight to her cell door. She slumped in her chair. The fight went out of her. It was physical. Her shoulders dropped. Her chin fell. She looked suddenly very old. "What do you want?" she whispered. "Full restitution," I said. $14,700, paid immediately to the bank to close the line of credit, plus legal fees. "Fine," she muttered. "I will write a check." "And," Ethan spoke up. His voice was rough, but steady. "A permanent no-contact order. For both of us." Marjorie's head snapped up. She looked at her son. "Ethan, no. You cannot mean that. I am your mother." "I do mean it," Ethan said. "But for how long?" she asked, her voice trembling. "A month. A year." "Indefinitely," Ethan said. "Until we decide otherwise. If you contact us, if you send a letter, if you send a flying monkey, if you show up at our house, we will file the criminal charges. This settlement is your one chance to stay out of jail." "Ethan," she pleaded, reaching across the table. "You are my family. You are all I have." Ethan looked at her. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked sad. "I know," Ethan said, "but I have a family too. Mom, I have Stella, and I choose the family I am building over the family I was born into." Marjorie flinched as if he had struck her. That was the final blow. He had broken the cycle. He had chosen the wife over the mother. He had chosen the future over the past. She signed the papers. Her hand shook so badly that her signature was barely legible, a jagged scrawl of defeat. She wrote the check. She signed the no-contact agreement. "Mr. Henderson took the papers. "We are done here." Marjorie stood up. She looked at us one last time. She tried to summon some of her old fire, some of that Callahan arrogance. "You will regret this," she said. "You will be bored without me. You will realize that she is not enough for you. Ethan." "Goodbye, Marjorie," I said. She turned and walked out. Aunt Celeste followed her, not to comfort her, but to ensure she actually left the building. We sat in the conference room for a long time after she left. The silence was different this time. It wasn't the heavy silence of secrets. It was the light, airy silence of a room that has been swept clean. Ethan reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was warm. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I am," I said, and I was. I felt lighter than I had in 5 years. "Are you—" "It hurts," he admitted, "but it is the right kind of hurt, like setting a broken bone." We walked out of the law firm into the bright Michigan sunshine. The city looked the same, but it felt different. The threat was gone. The shadow that had loomed over our marriage was gone. We had drawn a line in the sand, not with screaming matches or drama, but with truth and evidence. I looked at my phone. The Leona Revenge Stories channel notification popped up, a reminder of the stories I used to listen to for comfort. Now, I had my own. Marjorie paid the debt. She moved to Florida 6 months later. We heard from a cousin that she tells people her son moved to Europe and that she is giving them space. She still lies, but she lies far away from us. We renovated the house. We did it with our own money, saved carefully, transparently, every time I walk into my kitchen. I look at the space where she stood that night, and I feel a sense of peace. I didn't destroy her. I just held up a mirror, and when she looked into it, she couldn't survive what she saw. Boundaries are not punishments. They are simply the place where the truth lives. And we finally have plenty of room for the truth. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a long journey from that terrifying party to this moment of peace, and I am grateful I could share it with you. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from your kitchen, your car on the way to work, or maybe unwinding in bed? Please leave a comment below and let me know. Let's chat in the comments section if you enjoyed seeing justice served. Please subscribe to the Leona Revenge Stories channel, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need the courage to draw their own boundaries. Stay strong, and see you in the next story.